Infrastructure Committee. We've got a quorum here with 6 members present. So we will jump straight into our public comment period. We did have someone sign up to make a public comment this afternoon. We've got a friend, John Bull, here today. Mr. Bull, if you would like to come on up to the podium and introduce yourself, you will have 2 minutes. Is it 2 minutes for public comment? You'll have 2 minutes, and if you'll just let us know who you are, and I'll, you can go right ahead and start now, Mr. Bull.
John Bull. I live at 370 Wallace Road, Nolensville Pike, which is why I'm here. The first resolution on the agenda is in reference to safety measures for Nolensville Pike. I've got 3 items on that. One, crossing Nolensville Pike at Wallace Road, at Walgreens and Nolensville Pike, white crosswalks, white pedestrian signal. I've been hit twice by trucks crossing on to Nolensville Pike. I consider that something of interest personally. The truck was not damaged. Nor I. Second thing, I do a lot of volunteer work with people living on the street in that immediate area. 2-block area. Yesterday afternoon, I counted 17 people, street people in that area. Everything from, well, a lot of activity, a lot of people homeless. That's a lot of pedestrian traffic in a very short area of Nolensville Pike. And the third thing is I'd like to see what the enhancement presentations are as far as safety along Nolensville Pike, which I use. In fact, I rode the bus. I'm a frequent rider 5 times already today going up and down Nolensville Pike, and intend to do at least a 6th. That's all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for joining us today, sir. And Mr. Bull was the only member of the public who signed up ahead of time for the public comment period. Is anyone present in the gallery wishing to make a public comment? All right, I'm seeing none, so I will declare the public comment period concluded. So first off, caught myself there. First off today, we've got representatives from NDOT here to present on speed limit setting. They asked us for time to present this, and we were happy to accommodate them. So we're going to start off with that. Gentlemen, if you could check your microphones, and if they're working, just introduce yourselves, and then you can jump into the presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Matt Purvis. I'm the council liaison for the Department of Transportation here in Nashville.
And Derek Hagerty with NDOT Traffic Engineering. As the chair said, today we're here just to talk about how we set speed limits at NDOT. There's been some changes lately to some of the regulations that we follow, so I wanted to update this committee. A couple of the topics we're going to cover today. I'm going to try to keep this short, 5 to 10 minutes, but really how this ties into our Vision Zero program, the new documents we're following, how we actually go collect the data we use to make these speed limit determinations, and the implementation process. All right, so background, I believe everyone here is likely familiar with the Nashville Vision Zero Action Plan. One of the strategies called out in this document is lowering speeds along the major arterials. This we actually pulled from the Federal Highway Administration proven countermeasures, where they noted that lowering speed limits along major arterials has a researched impact on decreasing crashes on those routes. And the document that we're using as guidance, and I'll get into this in a couple slides, is NCHRP 966. This was newly, passed in 2021 to really change how traffic engineers look at setting speed limits, going from primarily based on existing speeds on the roadway to what's comfortable for drivers, to taking in a whole host of factors so that we're not just accounting for the existing speeds now, but also safety factors, land use, things of that nature. So the first stop is our manual on uniform traffic control devices. This is a federal document that really provides guidance and regulations on how signage, markings, traffic signal, things of that nature are supposed to be across the country. Metro actually adopts the latest version of this in our Metro code, so we as NDOT will always follow this document. And I'm going to read verbatim here and editorialize a little bit as I go to help you understand what we're looking for. So speed zones, other than statutory speed limits, and that's the first thing I want to hit on. Statutory speed limits are the exception here. That's something that we in Nashville have used in the past, especially on our residential local streets, to just broadly lower speed limits from 30 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour. So that's something we're able to do through legislation. Doesn't require everything that's about to follow here. So speed zones shall only be established on the basis of an engineering study that's been performed in accordance with traffic engineer practices. The engineering study shall consider the roadway context. So that last sentence was newly added to this guidance during last year's update of this manual, which is one of the reasons we're here with you all. So the document we're using to inform our engineering studies, NCHRP 966, I'm going to look at my notes so that I get this acronym correct. It's the National Cooperative Highway Research Program. A lot of organizations feed into this. 966 was actually a byproduct of Texas A&M's Transportation Institute, which is one of the top transportation research institutes, in the entire country. So they were tasked with identifying a way to take a safe streets approach to setting speed limits. In the past, a lot of it's been, hey, let's go measure speeds. Most people are traveling around here. That's probably what the speed limit should be. We'll let the drivers decide. Now, the idea here, though, is to change that, bring a little more context into that decision, and keep it quantitative. We want to be fact-based. We want to be transparent. So when there's a request, we can share what we're looking at, how this decision came to be. I'm not going to spend too much more time on this document. It is publicly available. If you're interested in a copy, please reach out to us. It's a couple 100 pages long, really interesting reading. All right, so just kind of a quick look at, how that document is set up. We're still looking at that speed distribution, but also bringing in the safety factor to recommend that speed limit. So just providing a little more context on what's been done in the past. This slide here, I'm not going to go through it, but this is all the data input that's needed following this method to set the speed limits. So our engineers are taking all of this information you see here into account to ensure that we have the whole picture of the roadway, of the segments, as we make these recommendations. They do this through a number of different means of data collection. Always like our folks to get out in the field, see what's going on the ground. Google Maps, though, still great to use. Look at those overhead images, take some measurements, better than trusting the odometer. Transit ridership numbers we're able to pull from WeGo. They're a great partner on this. And then using a few of the TDOT sources, eTrims, Tennessee Times, TDOT crash rate database. They make a lot of data available to us as the local government that we're able to take advantage of and partner with them to make sure we're making good data-driven decisions. So once we have all that data, NCHRP 966 actually comes with a helpful Excel spreadsheet. We're able to plug in the information we have. The formulas are already set in here, so we don't have to do a lot of Excel coding. And this helps with, giving us that first round of suggestions. So with that, we do a little sanity check. Hey, this number that came out, does this seem right? We know these roadways, we drive them a lot. Does this seem correct for that context of what we're trying to achieve as a city? We also ensure that we check in with the police department, WeGo, and TDOT. A lot of what we're doing, especially on the arterials, those are TDOT roadways. We, as Nashville, have the ability to set speed limits there if the speeds are 55 or lower. But we want them to understand what we're doing, understand our approach to it. And we've helped that just, contributes to the good relationship between staff. WeGo obviously has a vested interest in getting from place to place in a timely manner. So same thing. We want to make sure they understand the context, how these decisions are being made, and I think they always like to see their data being used for initiatives such as this. And obviously, police plays a large role with their traffic enforcement decision. We want them to know what's coming, what's happening ahead of time, how implementation's going to take place so that they're able to contribute. Once we have our recommendation, all speed limits go to the Traffic and Parking Commission. By charter, they're the ones that have final say on, yes, we adopt this, no, we don't. We submit work orders to NDOT internal operations team that swaps out signs. What you'll see on some of the big arterial ones we have coming up, think the Pikes, we'll be putting out speed feedback radar signs to just reinforce the new speed limits. We really want to make sure people understand education, big piece of Vision Zero. Additionally, our signal timings. Those are typically set to the speed limit. So signal timings, if you're going on an arterial, it pays to be driving the speed limit. If you're going too fast, you're going to hit more red lights. Stop a little bit, then you'll get the green. If you drive the speed limit, you should be able to hit a good green band, go right through. We just retimed Gallatin Pike. So if you drive that, you'll see a pretty good example. We've had some good success. I will say, hey, if it's morning, afternoon, peak, rush hour, and we're just fully congested, probably not gonna make too big of a difference there. But, those non-peak hours, wanna make sure the signal timing rewards people that are driving the speed limit. Then finally, with all these projects, we like to come in on the back end, evaluate, see if it's working, what are unintended consequences, what can we apply to future speed limit studies on our arterials. So that concludes my presentation. I'll turn things back to the chair.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation. Do we have any questions? I see Councilmember Ellis, Ewing, and Spain. We'll start with that. We'll go to Councilmember Ellis. You're recognized.
Thank you. Now, I was happy to see in the evaluation part, MNPD being a part of that. So my question is, how does this differ from the traffic calming program?
Great question. So our traffic calming program is really centered on residential low volume streets. So think of the neighborhood streets most of us drive quite often. It's places where, we know there's some level of traffic, not high volumes. Most times, the only people that really need to be on those streets are the ones living there or going there, to drop off packages, to do some work in the residential neighborhoods. So those measures we use, things such as speed cushions, changes in markings, we know they divert some traffic back to main routes, but they slow down traffic on those minor ones. The speed limits here we're talking about are really on those major pikes. So think, Murfreesboro, Nolensville, Gallatin, large streets of that nature, which get 20 to 30,000 vehicles per day. They're also state-owned. So when it comes to the state routes, there's things TDOT will let us do. There's things they won't. Physical traffic calming measures, definitely one of the things that they won't allow us to do. TDOT is still very focused on efficiency. They're doing some great things to do there, to include safety as well. But we're a little more limited on what we can do on those state routes. So tools like this, reducing speed limits, working with MNPD, and hopefully delivering some transformative projects in the future. Nolensville is a great example of the Safe Streets for All grant, where we're working with TDOT, to fundamentally change what sections of that street look like to make it more safer, or kind of the different tool set available to us on those major arterials.
And I would jump in as well occasionally, or as additionally to say that they do go hand in hand in a lot of ways. That twice to this body, maybe not the same makeup of members, but we have come back twice to do those statutory speed limit changes. The first time we did it in the USD of bringing those local streets that would be eligible for traffic calming down from 30 to 25, as Derek mentioned earlier. And last year, we also came back and did the same for the GSD streets. So as of now, all the local streets in Nashville should be reduced down to 25 miles per hour. And that, the larger speed limit reductions as well as the traffic calming program have a lot of very shared values of safety and just overall benefits to the quality of life of folks driving on our network in general.
Okay, thank you. Up next, I had Councilmember Ewing. Councilmember Ewing, you are recognized.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, thank you for that presentation. I just had a quick question about what either our or other cities' experience has been in reality with lowering speed limits. How effective has that been? What are the statistics if you have them?
Oh, great question. And I'll say I don't have any statistics off the top of my head. We do have studies from the USD speed limit lowering that. Happy to share when I get back to the office. But, you know, I think one of the things that's important to recognize, changing the speed limits by itself is not going to make everyone comply. This is one out of many tools that we need to use, you know, to create a safer roadway network. And one of the big things that speed limits, you know, helps us with is it's aspirational. As we set these new speed limits, this is what we're designing to in the future. So when these roadway improvement projects come, and not just on NDOT, but also TDOT, you know, hey, maybe we're building towards a 35-mile-an-hour street, not a 65-mile-an-hour one. And that really changes the end product of those projects.
All right, thank you, Councilmember Ewing. Councilmember Spain is next. Councilmember, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the presentation. I worked for TDOT for a while, several years ago, and I had a little bit of PTSD when you started talking about the MUTCD. My question is about notification. I heard of a situation recently where a speed limit was being lowered on a major thoroughfare in a council member's district, and they found out about it when they saw it on the agenda for the Traffic and Parking Commission. I'm just wondering, we've been talking about the traffic calming program, and of course we're notified when those projects are selected. I'm just wondering if there's a notification piece to this where maybe we could help with that public education piece and be ready to answer those kind of questions when they come up.
So, Mr. Haggerty, I'm happy to go to you, or I see Chief Engineer, or no, now Deputy Director, I believe. Anyway, you can introduce yourself, sir.
Hey, my name is Brad Freese. I'm Deputy Director of the Nashville DOT. Thank you, Chair. So to comment specifically on that, that was an error that we made, actually not including the council members. We should have included them earlier on. We have worked with them on those projects, but we should have been more transparent in working with those council members, and that's what we're trying to. We got ahead of ourselves, I'll just be honest a little bit, but we really definitely need to work with the council members. Part of this is acceptance. We don't want people to feel or perceive that we're doing something that's punitive, we're trying to lower the speed limit for a speed trap or something. We want people to understand what we're trying to do, the methodology that Derek just explained to you. And it's really about the energy equation, force equals mass times acceleration. We're trying to slow people down to decrease the risk of serious injuries occurring when the crashes do occur on there. So, but we do definitely need to do a better job of communicating with council members. That was one case. Actually, specifically in that, we had two speed studies, Dickerson Road and actually Lebanon Pike, that we were presenting. The first one we did extensive outreach. The second one was part of that process. We didn't do the outreach to the council members that we should have done on that case. So we are looking back and correcting that and going through that process.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think we just want to be in a position to be able to be good partners to you and when you're going through that process. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any other committee members? Councilmember Horton, you're recognized. Anybody else seeking to get in the queue for questions? Not seeing any. Councilmember Horton.
Thank you, Chair. I had two quick questions. The first one, I was encouraged to see all of the different criteria which goes into the study as to whether speed limit should be lowered. I think that's encouraging, especially if we're trying to create a more pedestrian-friendly and safe-to-walk environment. I just have a question. There's several parts of my district, like Centennial Boulevard comes to mind, where if you're evaluating the street currently, you might not see a lot of pedestrians on the road, that would merit lowering the speed limit. But I think there would be, but for very high, car speeds and traffic volume. So, I mean, does this have the ability to think, proactively about creating a more pedestrian-friendly environment? And I guess second question to effectiveness, to follow up on Councilmember Ellison Ewing's questions, Granted, it seems like on state roads, we have some constraints with what we can do, but does this have the ability to rely on more than just MNPD enforcement on the speed limits, like to influence street designs or maybe stop signs to stop people picking up so much speed on some of our main streets? And just what tools can this lead to other than just a lower posted speed limit?
Yeah, great question. So the first one, and to summarize the question, it's, when we're expecting growth, are we able to look at that? I would say absolutely. So when the transportation engineering section receives something, we're typically looking at a snapshot in time. So we're going out, looking at these numbers, plugging them in. When development services at NDOT, receive something, we're looking at predictions of what's going to come. What's increased volumes, not only for vehicles, but also pedestrians, bicyclists, transit riders. So there's opportunities there to update these studies through the MMTAs. And I don't know if this committee has been briefed on that previously. Yep, sounds like you all have. So there's opportunities there to look at those new predictions for pedestrian volumes, things of that nature, and use that to update, these studies and the results that we see. The second part of the question, what can we do with these speed limit rollouts further than just the sign? And made a great point. The signs themselves, they do a little bit. Education, enforcement are important. We know that engineering really makes a big impact here. And I think what we see is, with the local streets, it's a little easier to do something that has a big safety impact. Traffic calming is a great example. A lot of those projects, 40 to 50,000, very impactful to those residents. Once we start getting into those larger arterials, Charlotte Avenue being an example, there's still things that we can do there. It's typically looking at higher dollar costs and transformative projects, as we look to match the infrastructure to what we want the speed limit to be. So getting the speed limit that we want to see in place first, very important to drive those. TDOT has a 10-year project list out there. We keep a close eye on that, and we use that as an opportunity to get in, have a say in these projects, and ensure they match what we're looking for as a community. Obviously, CSP season's coming up, opportunities to get in transformative projects, and we are always looking for grant opportunities, to ensure that we're delivering safe streets.
Thank you, Councilmember. I have one question. So, it's about kind of the distinction and interaction between posted speed and design speed. I think about like a lot of the planning work that we do on Dickerson and Gallatin, which are the corridors I'm most familiar with, where, we've got, it might be implementing the -A districts on Gallatin to bring a more urban form, to bring buildings closer to the corridor to kind of lessen that perceived width of the roadway, landscaping to also kind of get a design speed that is, more conducive to safety and pedestrian activity. And, on Dickerson, we have an MDHA redevelopment district that really puts stringent controls on, ingress and egress and curb cuts and bringing buildings up to the corridor and whatnot. So, I see those things as kind of working, in concert with these efforts to change the posted speed. Obviously, you don't eliminate a sea of parking lots and head-in parking overnight by changing the speed limit. But, I guess my question is like broader, like across the county, not Dickerson and Gallatin, what is there kind of some feedback with planning about, okay, this is the direction that we're taking a corridor and trying to have safer environment here. And so maybe we need to look at zoning elements, or I'm not sure what's in place on other corridors because I've never looked at them as closely as mine. But I'm just curious if you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, great question. I think broadly, many of those large arterials, those state highways, those pikes are experiencing the very same things you're seeing on Gallatin and Dickerson. Not only residents of Nashville, but Metro staff, obviously our elected officials, spending a lot of time thinking about what we want those to look like going forward. One big initiative we have underway at NDOT is the 3MP. Do you want to? Okay.
I can go to,
I don't know if I'm getting out of the technical area and need to be cut off.
we can go to Ms. Freeze
Yeah, the
next.
3MP multimodal planning project, which is really, re-looking at how we plan and deliver our transportation network here in Nashville. Kind of taking a big 360-degree picture. We have all these plans. How does this tie together? And how does this lay a roadmap for where we want to get?
And I will go back to Deputy Director Freeze at the public podium.
Yeah, that's a great question, Chair. So really working hand in hand with TDOT, they have a process they call as the road diet process, and really looking at some of these roads that are ultra wide and have a lot of higher design speeds, looking at a way to use actual physical infrastructure, narrow lanes, look at medians and things like that. They have been receptive to that. Sometimes people view that as a negative, like you're taking lanes away. It doesn't always mean taking lanes away. It means exactly what you're saying is providing more contextual design solutions in there, like narrower lanes or like a median in those locations to where you are slowing people down by nature of design. So we are always looking at that. That's something with the all access corridors that we've talked about, the complete streets. I'll use 12th Avenue South for an example in there. But yes, we are actively pursuing that with the state in several areas.
Thank you. And yeah, that brings me to another point about the design and having folks recognize what's an appropriate speed for where they're traveling. I mean, one of the most dangerous spots in my area is the 65 Trinity interchange, and I think that a lot of what happens there, we have a lot of pedestrian activity up there, but I think a lot of what happens is people are still in interstate mode when they hit Trinity, and they haven't adjusted down to, I'm in a neighborhood or a commercial corridor yet. So it's great that the speed limit changes when you hit Trinity, but there's no visual cues, there's no indicators that this is a place where people are walking and living. So the more of that we can do, the better. I absolutely agree.
And I don't want to speak too out of turn, but you had mentioned, the planning context is important as well. And that's one of the big parts of 3MP is not just an NDOT exclusive effort, but it's taking all of our plans, all of our capital project ideas and all that sort of stuff, but also working actively with planning and WeGo to make all the context fit together and see what changes are needed in all three departments to kind of make everything copacetic together, whether that's planning reform, whether that's all access corridors, whatever that looks like. That's the intent of the 3MP, which is I think what you're mostly talking about and kind of asking for.
Could you remind me what the 3MP is?
Multimodal planning. I don't know where the 3M comes from though. Sorry, Brad.
No, it's the Mobility Master Plan.
Mobility Master Planning.
Mobility Master Planning. Okay, thank you. Excellent. Well, any other questions or comments for our guests here from NDOT? Okay, I'm seeing none. I want to thank you gentlemen for coming out and presenting with us today. Much appreciated. Or do you guys have anything else? I'm sorry, I didn't give you a chance. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah. All right, so we're going to jump into our regular agenda now after the presentation. I've got a proposed consent agenda. So I will go through and list off the committee item number and the bill number of the proposed consent agenda. If anything needs to come off, please let me know. Then I'll read the captions. So on the proposed consent agenda, I've got committee item 4, RS 2024-725, committee item 5, RS 2024-726, committee item 10, BL 2024-519, committee item 11, BL 2024-520, committee item 12, BL 2024-521, committee item 13, BL 2024-522, item 14, BL 2024-523, committee item 15, that's BL 2024-524, and committee item 16, that's BL 2024-525. Do any of those items need to come off of the consent agenda for discussion, questions, comments, anything of that nature? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to read the captions. So Committee item 4, RS 2024-725 by Porterfield, Parker, Welsh, and others. This accepts a donation from the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee to the Metropolitan Government, acting by and through the Department of Water and Sewerage Services to fund the composting initiative for Metro Nashville Public Schools. Committee item 5, this is RS 2024-726. Approves a project modification to an agreement between the Metropolitan Government and the United States Department of Army to add 2 parcels related to the acquisition and removal of flood-prone properties in the 7 Mile Creek watersheds. Committee item 10, this is BL 2024-519 by Coop and Porterfield, Gamble, and others. This approves an amended and restated agreement for a grant of a greenway conservation easement between the Metropolitan Board of Parks and Recreation and Byline Property Owner, LLC, for greenway improvements between 2nd Avenue North and 1st Avenue North, north of Van Buren Street, and particularly on a number of different parcels. Committee item 11, this is BL 2024-520 by Benedict, Gamble, and Parker. This authorizes the Metropolitan Government to abandon a portion of existing public utility easement rights for property located at 1520 Duggar Drive. Committee item 12, this is BL 2024-521. This authorizes the Metropolitan Government to acquire permanent and temporary easements through negotiation, condemnation, and acceptance for the Morrow Road Stormwater Improvement Project for 8 properties located on Morrow Road and Delray Court. And the sponsors of that piece of legislation are Gamble and Parker. Committee item 13, this is BL 2024-522 by Gamble and Parker. This authorizes the Metropolitan Government to accept new public water and sanitary sewer mains, new public fire hydrant assemblies, new public sanitary sewer manholes, and easements for 5 properties located on Cane Ridge Road, also known as Parks at Cane Ridge, Phase 1D. Committee item 14, this is BL 2024-523 by Toombs, Gamble, and Parker. This authorizes the Metropolitan Government to abandon existing public sanitary sewer main, sanitary sewer manhole, and easement for 2 properties located at 858 and 864 West Trinity Lane, also known as Northview Senior Living. Committee item 15, this is BL 2024-524 by Gamble and Parker. This authorizes the Metropolitan Government to accept new public sanitary sewer main, sanitary sewer manholes, and easements for 4 properties located on Sam Donald Road, Brentwood, in Williamson County, also known as Erico Subdivision. And lastly, committee item 16, this is BL 2024-525 by Huffman, Gamble, and Parker. This authorizes the Metropolitan Government to accept new public sanitary sewer main, new sanitary sewer manhole, and easement for property located at 3171 Lebanon Pike, also known as Jackson Downs. All right, having heard the captions, does anything else need to come off? Councilmember Allen, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Could we pull RS 2024-725 just to ask a question?
Yes. All right, 725, resolution 725 is no longer on the proposed consent agenda. Anything else need to come off? All right, could we get a motion and a second on the proposed consent agenda?
Approved.
All right, properly moved and seconded. Thank you. Any discussion on the consent agenda? All right, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any not voting? Thank you. Got 7. Thank you. All right. First item that was not on consent is RS 2024-723 by Porterfield, Parker, Welsh, and others. This approves an application for a strengthening mobility and revolutionizing transportation grant from the U.S. Department of Transportation to NDOT to improve the safety of vulnerable road users along the Nolensville Pike corridor and continue to improve safety along the Stage 1 corridor by deploying sensing, analytics, and interventions to identify safety issues. Could we get a motion and a second on this?
Approval.
All right, properly moved and seconded. Just because we've got a lot of, I think we've submitted multiple applications for grants on Nolensville. I think some have been awarded. I wondered if someone from NDOT could just give us a very brief context for what this particular application is, and very briefly about anything else that we have going on Nolensville broadly. You're recognized, sir.
Derek Hagerty, NDOT. So the SMART grant, we were awarded phase 1 about a year ago. What this is really about is using advanced technologies to inform design. So we've already installed, under phase 1 of this grant, 7 sets of LiDAR devices to capture anonymous 3D data, which allows us to see near misses, pedestrian path patterns, vehicle turning radius, all of that. Currently on Buchanan Street in Clarksville. This phase 2 application, which is 100% federally funded, would do something similar, would extend that section in North Nashville but would also deploy throughout a large section of Nolensville Pike. What we'd like to see as a department, you've mentioned we've won a few grants out there, including the Safe Streets for All grant. Our hope would be to, one, receive this grant and deploy these devices while we're still in the design phase. So you use that real world data, see the heat maps of where pedestrians are crossing to best locate the infrastructure out there and design around it. Following construction, this would already be in place so we can have instantaneous evaluation, not only after construction, but during, so we're able to adapt on the fly as this new data comes in real time.
Thank you. That's very helpful context. Any other, I'll go to Mr. Purvis back there as well.
Matt Purvis, and I was also going to use this opportunity to plug, as we're doing this, all of this work runs out of our TMC, and you all should, as of last week, should have gotten an invitation from me for our official TMC ribbon cutting event, where you can show up and see actually the visuals of what the data we're collecting on phase one and would hopefully be able to collect if awarded this grant for phase two. And to clarify, the section of Nolensville that this phase two would cover would be the entire corridor. So it's larger than the limits of the Safe Streets for All. So it would also inform future designs for any other additional capital dollars by whatever source they would be.
Thank you. All right. Well, that's helpful information, and thank you to NDOT for pursuing this grant opportunity. Any other questions, discussion on this item? All right, we'll take it to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any not voting? I recommend approval. 7 in favor, 0 against. All right, next we have Item 3, this is RS 2024-724 by Porterfield and Parker. This authorizes the Metropolitan Government to enter into agreements with the City of Belle Meade, the City of Brentwood, the City of Goodlettsville, the City of Laverne, the City of Millersville, the City of Ridgetop, and the White House Utility District for the acceptance and treatment by the Metropolitan Government of Nashville and Davidson County of sewage flow from their individual and separate sewage collection systems. Can we get a motion and a second on this, please?
Approval.
All right, properly moved and seconded. Y'all will remember this this item. It was not filed prior, but I think 2 meetings ago, we had folks from Metro Water Services come give us a little brief explainer about this. We've got all the associated documents posted on our committee SharePoint page, as well as I think they're in the exhibit of the filed legislation. But that being said, it's a significant contract, and so I wanted to make sure we had it off consent in case anybody had any additional comments, questions, anything. I see we've got folks from Water here. Do any committee members have questions, concerns, anything about this piece of legislation? Okay, I'm seeing none, and I appreciate Water being proactive with something that ahead of time, giving us a heads up about this and getting us all the documentation early, so we had plenty of time to look over it. So thanks for doing that, and thanks for being here. This is a really cool partnership. It's something that I think Nashville should be proud of, that we're able to partner with these neighboring utility districts and take care of our very shared collective problem, which is sewage. So it's pretty cool to be able to partner with them on this and get the rates updated to a good spot. So that being said, I'm seeing no more discussion or questions on this. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, recommend approval, 7 in favor, 0 against. All right, committee item 4, this is RS 2024-725 by Porterfield, Parker, Welch, and others, accepts a donation from the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee to the Metropolitan Government, acting by and through the Department of Water and Sewerage Services to fund the composting initiative for Metro Nashville Public Schools. Can we get a motion and a second, please?
Approval.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. I'll go to Councilmember Allen. Do you have a question, comment, anything about this?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm excited that we're doing this. I know that the compost pilot in the neighborhoods has been really, really popular, so it's exciting to work with the kids as well. I just wondered if we could find out what schools will be taking advantage of that.
Sure. Is anybody here from Solid Waste that can, if you would please introduce yourself, you're recognized.
Hi, everyone. Jen Harmon with Nashville Waste Services. So we have 11 different schools that have signed up that are participating. I don't think I'm going to be able to name all 11 off the top of my head, but we've got J.T. Moore and West End Middle, so 2 middle schools. All the rest are elementary schools. It includes Amqui Station, Stanford Montessori, Glendale, oh boy, Hickman Elementary, Inglewood Elementary, and I can get you the rest, the full list, and send you an email.
The administration would like to tap in and let us know the other schools that are included.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's Inglewood Elementary, Gatewood Elementary, Laughlin Design Center, West End Middle, J.T. Moore, Stanford Montessori, Hickman Elementary, Glendale Elementary, Thomas Edison, Norman Binkley, and AMQI, Global Communication Magnet.
Thank you. Did that answer your question, Councilmember?
That's great. I'm excited. 11 schools is fantastic.
Wonderful. Well, thank you all. Any other questions, discussion on this one? All right, seeing none. So all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, recommend approval, 7 in favor, 0 against. All right, moving on to bills on second reading, we have committee item 6. This is BL 2024-511 by Evans, Siegel, Parker, Evans, and others. This amends Chapter 11.12 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws to create buffer zones to maintain public safety around public buildings and parking lots. Could we get a motion in a second, please? All right, properly moved and seconded. First off, does anybody have specific questions or comments about this? I just pulled it off of consent to ask the administration to give us a brief explanation and summary of this piece of legislation. All right, Councilmember Allen, I'll let you go first.
Thank you. I would just add to that request, in light of comments that we heard at the last council meeting, as they describe it, if they could just deal with addressing the concerns that were expressed about people not being able to demonstrate peaceably on the courthouse square, because I think that is an important concern. And I've heard answers that I'm satisfied with, and I want everybody else to hear that too.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll go to the administration table for Mr. Dietz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Council Member, for the question. This bill will not limit the ability of Nashvillians or others to protest peacefully in our public square area or anywhere else in Nashville. It will have zero impact on that. This bill is targeted specifically at any group that tries to prevent people from coming or going from a government building. And so the protests that we see routinely on our public square, and sometimes on the Diane Nash Plaza, I've not seen one of those where individuals have tried to keep people from going to and from the building. This is just to guarantee access to a government building. The right to protest and assemble is still there.
Thank you, sir. Any other, okay, I see Councilmember Cash. Councilmember Cash, you are recognized.
Thank you. So just as a follow-up to that answer, so there has to be an intent to block. It can't, I mean, like, if we've got a bunch, a couple of hundred people protesting, it's going to be hard for some of them to know, hey, I'm the one that's supposed to make sure I'm out of the way so that there is a route to get in or out of the building. So you Mr. Dietz, seemed to say something about intent.
Director Dietz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Council Member, for the question. It's a good one. So the first provision is knowingly, physically obstruct or block. So to be guilty of this, you as an individual would have to be knowingly blocking or preventing someone from accessing a government building. If you were part of an assembly that's a large crowd, I don't interpret this section to apply. And then the same thing is true for the threatening force or harsh language designed to interfere with a person going or coming. I think what we are going to see is some common sense solutions here. As you know, the Sheriff's Department is in charge of the perimeter of the building. This building, if we're talking about this courthouse in particular, which is the site of most of our protests, the Sheriff's Office can help designate a passageway for people who need to, for instance, come and go to a meeting of the Metro Council to make sure that that happens while still preserving the right to protest. So I am we will not see, that's not the intent of this legislation, people as part of a crowd out there on the square being charged with a violation of this.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions, comments on 511? All right, seeing none, so we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of 511, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, recommend approval, 7 in favor, 0 against. Next, we have Committee Item 7. This is BL 2024-512 by Toombs, Parker, Evans, and others. This amends Section 12.12.170 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws to prohibit the placement of unauthorized signs, signals, or markings over a highway. Could we get a motion and a second, please? All right, properly moved and seconded. Similarly, I just wanted to hear an explanation from the administration here in committee on this one, but does anybody have specific questions, concerns, issues from the committee that they'd like to raise? I'll go first to Councilmember Spain. Councilmember, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a thought on this one. Sometimes you see if say a law enforcement officer or a firefighter or someone in a position like that loses their life and somewhere away from their home, and they are traveling along our highways, being brought back to their home, you'll often see, flags draped over overpasses, that sort of thing along the way. Obviously, there's going to be some discretion in how this sort of thing is enforced, but I'm just wondering if this would apply to that and if there should be any specific mention of something like that.
Director Dietz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Council Member, for the question. So the first part of my answer is that this ordinance is content neutral. It applies to any sign that's being hung over the highway. And so it would apply to any sign hung over a highway or any flag or anything of that nature. And it's important that we remain content neutral in the application of this statute, of this ordinance, and in the language itself. That said, this ordinance, the way we are amending it, would not prohibit someone from standing on the side of a road and waving an American flag, even holding a large American flag, while that procession is progressing. So that ability is not affected at all by this. So I believe people who want to express patriotism, honoring such a person would have the right to do it, but not hang it from a bridge over the highway.
Thank you. Any other questions on this one? All right, seeing none, so we will go to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, again, recommend approval, 7 in favor, 0 against, and 0 not voting. Next, we have Committee Item 8. This is BL 2024-513 by Evans, Siegel, Parker, Hill, and others. This amends Sections 12.48.030 and 12.84.050 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws to grant the Director of NDOT the authority to set time limits for passenger and freight loading zones. Could we get a motion and a second, please? Properly moved and seconded. Similarly, I wanted to just give NDOT an opportunity to let us know what this is, what's being changed here. I know that we've had a lot of discussion about Connect Downtown and how we're going to better manage our curb space in the area, and we just appreciate an explanation as to what this is. So I'll go to you, Deputy Director Freeze.
Thank you, Chair. So this actually is as a result of Connect Downtown and a lot of stakeholder engagement. We have found that right now the current 30-minute limit that's in there for loading zones is insufficient, especially in situations where there is a delivery service delivering to multiple businesses downtown. They can quickly go over that 30-minute limit when they're having to go and deliver, for example, to 3 or 4 bars along a pathway. So we don't want them to have to recirculate in traffic just so they can deliver to a business within walking distance from where they're parking. So this actually provides us flexibility to use data to base those decisions. We are going to use data for analyzing what those actual delivery needs are, what those times are going to be in the future, and that will be followed by a lot of engagement as well. But this just gives us the ability to do that without having to codify it in the code as far as a 30-minute timeline, so it doesn't, not quickly outdated.
Okay, thank you for that explanation. Do we have any other questions, concerns, comments on this piece? Okay, seeing none, so we'll go to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, again, recommend approval, 7 in favor, 0 against, and 0 not voting. All right, next, and I believe last actual committee item is committee item 9. This is BL 2024-514 by Evan Siegel and Parker. This amends section 13.08.040 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws regarding permits and penalties for vendors on or near public property. Can we get a motion in a second, please? All right, thank you. Properly moved and seconded. So similarly, I know that we had some legislation fairly recently around vending and permits and right-of-way. So if we could just get someone from NDOT again to let us know what this piece of legislation does for that regulatory structure. And so Mr. Purvis, we'll go back to you.
Thank you, Chair. So basically, this tweaks the code a bit to actually allow us to further regulate what we've taken to this body already for street vendors. We've had some issues with enforcement and kind of are having a limited tool belt of how to actually handle our vendors and get them to abide by what we need them to abide by. So this helps us revoke as well as it gives a process for revocation and kind of those things that lie in. But Brad has more than that.
Thank you. Mr. Freese. I'm sorry, Deputy Director Freese.
No, you're good, Chair. So this actually gives us the option of giving probation instead of just revocation or suspension. So allows us to do meeting to meeting. If someone is placed on probation, allows them to rectify that situation, whether it's paying their previous fines or improving their behavior before we move to giving a outright suspension of their license. So it is actually, it came through Traffic and Parking Commission. We are in support of this bill because it provides us more flexibility.
Excellent. Okay, thank you, sir. Any other questions, comments about this? All right, seeing none, so we'll move to a vote on 514. All those in favor, please say aye. Any opposed? Any not voting? All right, again, recommend approval, 7 in favor, 0 against, and I believe we now have recommendations on all legislative items. I have a couple of brief updates for the chair report here. Vice Chair Evan Siegel is now moving on to chairing our East Bank ad hoc committee. And so I have asked committee member Roland Horton to serve as our vice chair for this committee for the upcoming year, and he has agreed. So I want to thank him for doing that and look to see him up here at some point, running the computer and all that. So thank you, Councilmember Horton, Vice Chair Horton, for agreeing to that. And y'all have maybe seen on social media or other sources that dozens, I think around 50 WeGo bus shelters have been, have had their glass broken some way. Suspected vandalism, but no one really knows what's going on with those yet. It's about 50 in total, about 20 over this last weekend. Lots of them in East Nashville, but I've heard of other parts of town where this is happening as well. So I did confirm this morning that WeGo is coordinating with MNPD to investigate these incidents, and hopefully we'll find out what the heck is happening to our bus shelters pretty soon. So appreciate WeGo and MNPD for looking into that. And that's all I have for us this afternoon, folks. So I will adjourn this meeting.